Hi, welcome to Prayer Warrior Week 7 lecture. I am excited to share with you today's reading before we meditate together and I pray in. And it is from, again, Joel S. Goldsmith, The Master Speaks, page 242. And before I read, I'm just asking this question to you. Have you ever, thought you saw a snake and you jumped, you had like a real response because you thought it was a snake. You had a physiological response. And then you look down and you realize it wasn't a snake, or maybe a bug or a spider or something. And so that's what the reading is going to refer to, that immediate response to what you thought was a snake. Every one of us is sometimes tempted to try to heal something, overcome something, or get rid of something. I've never known anyone in this work who has not come under that temptation at some time or another. And in succumbing to that temptation lies our failure. There's no better healing treatment in the world than the remembrance of the snake and the rope. The snake is not a snake at all, but a rope. You may be thinking, when you say that, you're virtually saying that disease is something good. No, I did not say the snake was a rope. I said what you saw as a snake was a rope. There was no snake there to be a rope. I do not say that disease is of God. I say that what you have looked at and said was disease is of God. That is quite different. What you are seeing as a snake, in other words, the mirage, is actually a rope. So where you are seeing sin and disease, there actually the presence of God is. But through finite sense, you are seeing it incorrectly. Let the Christ, that is, the spiritual awareness, interpret the snake and the rope, and it will say to you, that is not a snake, that is a rope. It will not remove a snake. It will not cure a snake or gallstones either. It will not heal cancer or consumption. It will interpret this spiritual scene to you and say to you, stop your worrying, stop your fearing. God is all there is. And that very thing that you are trying so hard to get rid of and overcome is not there. The whole purpose of the use of the letter of truth is to develop spiritual consciousness. How do you know when you have achieved spiritual consciousness? Only when you can look at a rope and see a rope. When you can look at any and every person and see the Christ instead of seeing a sick or sinning human being. When you can do this, you will know that your Christ self is taking over the personal self. When you can look at a person without envy, jealousy, malice, lust, hate, greed, or revenge, you have developed spiritual consciousness because you know then that that person is the Christ, that you are the Christ, and that both of you are the fullness of the Godhead bodily. Then you know that you have the Christ vision or the Holy Ghost. Again, that's The Master Speaks, page 242 by Joel S. Goldsmith. And so now let's close our eyes for a minute and then I'll speak an affirmative prayer. I am so grateful for this breath and to be alive one more day, feeling and sensing and recognizing the presence of God, the presence of the living I am, the holy Christ self, the consciousness of the Christ, the living one, the isness that is the absolute non-dual good, an infinite eternal presence that only knows its own name and nature. It only knows its own fulfillment. It is the fullness of life, the force and source, the Shakti life force moving into matter in this perfect individualized way known as my life, the life of each and every individual within the sound of my voice. There is one here, and that one is God. And it is the life and the love and the liberty, the truth of their being. These individuals live and move and have their beingness in this realm where they've never been hurt. They are the original blueprint, the Christ mind. There is no other reality to their being. They are one in God. They never left God. And the mind that was in the Christ is the truth and the reality of their mind, regardless of the five senses, regardless of memory. One power, one force, one source. It is the very substance of all life, and it is the truth of their being now and forever, always will be. This power and force and source is an absolute. It doesn't withhold from itself, it doesn't contradict itself, it doesn't injure or limit its own nature and will. God's will and God's nature are one and the same. And it has formed itself into this perfect creation known as these individuals here within the sound of my voice, so that it could be more self-expressed, so that it could be more of itself. That means the will of this power incarnated is its own nature, and that is life and love and liberty and abundance and bounty and full self-expression, harmony, freedom. Oh, it's so good. The good of the I am, this pressing down on these individuals now, bursting forth as the activity of their life and the body of their affairs. I know this love, this God love, this love intelligence, that it is knocking on their doors. It is hunting them. It is rushing to them. They're owned by divine holy right, for they have asked, they have sought, they have knocked, and the presence that is never an absence has opened, it has answered, it has revealed its nature. That we never left the kingdom. We never left. It's all here right now. The perfect Christ mind made available now to these individuals, reconfiguring, dissolving all belief systems and thought patterns that do not serve. Something wonderful is happening as the activity of their consciousness now, because of their sacred yes, to be the awareness of the living word that they are. And it is into this yes that I speak this word, declaring everything is easy now in their life. All the heavy lifting is over, and the presence of the divine makes itself known now, bringing its comfort and grace to these individuals in ways they can feel and sense and perceive that matter to them. That is the mercy and the love and the grace that is. That is what is at the foundation of their mandate to live and have life and have it more abundantly. The love of the divine is loving all the seeming otherness away. That is what is happening. I'm so thankful my word is a law. I know that there are testimonies galore, and I release this word and let it be. And so it is. Ashe. Good evening, afternoon, morning, whatever time it is for you watching this lecture. So we're in week 7 now, and that means if you are praying every day, if you're doing your 28-day prayer for the person or institution you need to forgive the most, if you've been reading the handouts from the workbook materials, then more than likely there has been some type of shift in your consciousness. And of course, the points that I've been trying to make is that it's more than just words. We're not just here to have the plagiarized praise phrases. It's the first step as the violinist learns to hold the instrument, learns the scales, practices other people's songs. Eventually, we learn to have this creative genius flow through us into our heart, our consciousness, and then out as the living word. And so what I've been stressing is that it is this beautiful portal of your feeling and your understanding of these absolute principles, which are not easy for everybody to understand. It's just as the snake is not there to be cured by your prayer. The snake was never there. It's a rope. We're here to see the rope, which is the only thing that's ever there. There never is a snake to cure or fix or dissolve or clear up. It's just not there. And that's what the absolute teachings teach. Now, can I honestly say I live from that place? No. I know that's the ideal attitude, mindset, practice that I am to have before I leave my door, before I walk out of the house. I want to be established in my role here on the planet, which is not to be a part of the agreement, obviously, that most people are making about the 4 corners of life: health, wealth, love, and relationships, full self expression. Health, wealth, relationships, love, and expression, livelihood, your creative genius expressed. You know, most people are, the world is in an agreement around secondary causation and duality and separateness and otherness and the power, in 2 powers, basically. And what absolute is saying is there's one power. And we're practicing that with grace and mercy for ourselves and gentleness for ourselves, because it isn't easy, especially at a time like this. But this is why you have been born. If you are listening to these lectures, then there's no doubt you were born to bring a evolution of humanity's consciousness into this next stage, not through fun AI and memes and, you know, metaphysics, but through a real established vibratory field that you are as you walk into a room because of what you know. And we know something because we studied ancient literature around it, because we can see it in science, and because we have direct experience. And that is how we know this thing called God. Quantum theorists now have a great language that we can understand. Vedic science, any ancient wisdom, any shamanic ancient oral traditions, all of them say the same thing. One, one power, one causation, and it is consciousness itself and the unified field and the Christ. If you don't like that word Christ because there's a Christian wound, then the Krishna consciousness. It doesn't matter what you call it. But for you to know it, you'll have to have that cultivated direct contact. And then as this journey progresses, it becomes, a beautiful experiential journey through your continued metamorphosis of who you are continuing and continuing to become. And that often can involve chemicalization, integration, dark nights of the soul. Okay, so we've talked about that. And we know that if we are going out our front door to look at a world and not be in agreement with the mediocrity, but we are here to see a rope and not the snake that everybody's agreeing on. Okay, so that's going to require an establishment of of your vibratory knowing, your vibratory field. There's a wonderful reading in the Optimist Creed by Christian D. Larson that is in the packet called The Lost Word. And you've read the Greg Braden Lost Mode of Prayer, and you've seen the videos, and that what's required from studying this, in my opinion, what I've been trying to drive home to you, is to feel it. You have to feel what you are, praying for, really, which means you're praying from. And so I love the readings that I've referenced because it really gives the sense of what that is, the thought, the feeling, and the word. Because for me, it is the left brain is your rational, conscious thought that understands things through language, that knows how to put these praise phrases together to articulate the recognition and the unification step. And that is the activity that the left brain can help us to do. And it's sort of the thought, for me, it is the thought portion. The feeling is a right brain experience. You can totally feel, something, freedom, even though you're not doing the thing that gives you freedom. I always use the example of one of my 6 things that I love that I couldn't live without. One of them was horseback riding. Well, I'm not going to be riding horses, not right now. I haven't ridden a horse in a while, but what it was about it was that feeling of being on this body and moving, running, basically running horses. It's not trotting or walking, it's running horses. That's what gives me the freedom. I've done it. We had horses as a kid, my part of my family did, and horse camp at school, summer camp, I mean. And so I know what it feels like to run on a horse, and it's just this feeling of freedom. And I don't have to ride the horse now to access that feeling. I do love it going on boats. I love living in Virginia. There's so much water here. Friends have boats and stuff. And so when the water's smooth, I get that same physical experience. But I don't need it in order to to have it become resonant as part of this practice. And so I will feel the quality that I'm praying from. When somebody is asking me for a prayer and the whole world is a prayer request at this point, then that's what I'm doing, is saying, well, what if God is all there is, and there's God doesn't contradict itself, and I'm obviously seeing the snake. So um, if God is all there is, and I'm seeing the snake, let me, you know, let me close that outer eye and become the answer, so that somebody can collapse the wave function on truth. And it's it can be a lonely path. But you have access to the technology that brings the truth through your knowledge of this presence, and through your practice of being the living vibratory word that changes form. I mean, that's the important thing about this technology, is that we know the word is a law. That sound creates. That's cymatics. That's science. We're not saying a prayer to an outside deity in hopes of it being answered. We are establishing ourselves in our spiritual authority through recognition and unification. And then we unify and affirm the spiritual authority of our case or our prayer partner. And then we are allowing this feeling to drop in to the right brain and be expressed, because that left brain is busy. We've given it plenty to do with steps and principle. And so it will leave you alone if you give it something to do. And that right brain, once you leave it alone, it can feel, and it can receive. Sometimes it's imagery, it can be sound bites, but you will receive what's going to be spoken. It just comes through like you didn't make it up. It happened. And that is ultimately the purpose of this class. You can go take a prayer class somewhere and learn these steps. But what I've been trying to get to you is what I've, maybe not thoroughly enough, but I've been studying this, and maybe not thoroughly enough practicing it, because there is evidence that this technology can actually bring what we would call miracles to people. And that is so important to me, especially at a time like this, with the medical industry changing. I'm, you know, more and more grateful for this technology. So you've got this left brain, you've got this right brain, thought, feeling, and word, which is your throat chakra. And that right brain is what's directly connected to your heart. So you have this left brain, right brain, subconscious heart connection. Your right brain is what's connected to your subconscious and the sound carrier wave. That's why We are always dreaming. The dreaming part of the mind it's always there. Just because you're awake and there's a lot of beta going on in your brain, it doesn't mean there isn't some dream wave activity. But the more you practice, the more that you contemplate these absolute truths and that you practice meditation and you practice sacred study and fellowship and affirmative prayer, you begin to change. It's new neural nets begin to grow. And and that's what we're doing. This class, my hope is that you will really hear the level of power that you have, that you are born with, nothing lacking. All that is required is your knowledge. And how you get that established, remember, something will move from a belief to knowledge with those three aspects. All that's required is your knowledge, your feeling, your ability to access the feeling, the quality, the deep unconscious, subconscious knowledge in you of this non-dual good. It's only discerned spiritually. It isn't discerned by the left brain, but the left brain is in charge of describing it. It's indescribable, but the left brain does deal with the language. So, but that right brain, it's connected. It's the part of you that's always fired. The dreaming mind is always firing. So you go to sleep at night and the beta shuts down and the dream comes more alive. But the truth is, you can become more aware of this part of your mind and it can come online more while you're awake because you're interested in this path. That's my take on it. And when you are aware, when your dreaming mind becomes more awake, your subconscious, you have more access to it now because it's trying to talk to you all the time. The presence of God, which is the super conscious, right? Your I am presence is always broadcasting, always, always, always. But we don't reach it from the level of consciousness to super. We have to go to the subconscious, and then together those aspects of us ascend. And so by waking up the dreaming mind and allowing your dreaming mind to be interesting and studying, when you say I'm interested in the presence and how is it showing up to me, and you're actually saying, turn on subconscious mind, I'm interested in you, because it is the avenue to the presence. This is my take. And I think it's Carl Jung's take, and I think it's all the shamanic indigenous cultures and the Course in Miracles too. In a way, we have to become aware that the snake is really convincing. And we're going to try so hard to use these truths to fix that snake into a rope. That is never there. It's never been there. God is a non-dual good. It does not contradict itself. I must be looking at a snake until I can see the rope or until I am aware that I'm triggered by a snake. I'll just keep my eyes closed. I'll just work on my consciousness. Seek ye first the kingdom. I'm not doing this perfectly, but I am so grateful that I found the truth and that I found an avenue, to applying it into my life. So you have the thought, the word, and the feeling. You have been equipped with this power to use the vibration frequency of the word to bring the quality of God into form. And remember, form is an invisible mold in consciousness, according to Plato. And it is the demonstration. These are from my earlier lectures, remember? When you can create the form, and where two or more are gathered in agreement of that form, of course, we've got more to work with there. When the practitioner demonstrates, the demonstration is in the invisible. It is the form. That is the demonstration. The rest is not my business. It might end up me trying to fix the snake, trying to make the snake turn into a rope. It was never there. Let me just go back to the form, the Christ mind. That's my business, to establish this form. And I'm saying this, you can apply this to anything. So I was sharing recently about an experience I had, well, I guess it was 20 years ago, when I did a wonderful ontological study through a cool, thing called the Landmark Forum. I did the entire curriculum while I was in the prac track, and I loved it. I had a wonderful healing experience in my family, and I am not a secular person. My work has really been on the spiritual side, so I'm not involved with it. It has its interesting aspects to it, but I did learn a lot. And one of my leaders at one point was he became aware of all of us and the apathy we really actually had over our own transformation. And he kind of was giving us a hard time because, people say, well, they want this healing, they want to be transformed, and then, you've got to do some efforting, I guess. You've got to look like in this work, you have to be willing to do some of the overturning of your belief systems. You have to kind of look into the shadows and become self-reflective and own some stuff and begin to take on these belief systems that keep you seeing snakes. But, you know, we we are on this path, and we're here to be the establishment of that form in Christ, the Christ mind. So I know that just by you having taken this class and putting this little bit of effort into the expansion of your consciousness, your ability to articulate these principles, and your commitment to establishing a physiological response to your own word. That is what we're going for here. To use the recognition and unification steps to lift your 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 physiological response. This is what the spirit of the word is, or the soul of the word is. It is what the practitioner is feeling. That's what gets transmitted. And that's not something that really can be taught. It's just transmitted. But what we're teaching ourselves is that we have access to it and we have the tools and we have the ability to make this transformation happen. But it does require our commitment. It does require our ability to take ourselves on. And what this forum leader was sharing was how he was from Cuba. And he was pointing out how we were all rather apathetic. Like we said we wanted transformation, but we weren't really working the program or, you know. And he said, you have no idea to really want something. And he talked about his cousin. He said, my cousin took an inner tube to the shores of Cuba and got on it and kicked until he got to Florida. That is somebody that says, I'm going to be transformed or I'm going to die. I'm done. And I think that's kind of how I've gotten used to it for me. I've never been proud of being a, whatever you call that, a type A personality or something where I'm often having to be pushed by pain. Um, but that's okay. It is for me. It has been life or death. I think that that's what's required to really surrender yourself. But here's the thing about surrendering. We are surrendering our will and our life over to this presence and this power that wants to fulfill its nature through your life. And if we don't have the relationship with it of faith and trust, then we'll struggle with fear and everything. Trust me, I know this. And so what's coming through for me is the difference between belief and faith. If you believe, well, let me put it this way. When you wake up and you put your feet on the floor, you know, like faith, you know that the floor is not going to collapse. You're going to stand up. And that is the form and consciousness that is being asked of us in the world as such a time as this. The knowing that all there is the rope. So I am very grateful to be with you on this path, honored and thankful. Peace and blessings.